Ed, we've chatted before, of course, but for the benefit of those who've never seen one of our conversations, tell us how you came to be at the New Saints in the first place.
Yeah, so obviously went through all the usual channels, went to school, did PE and sports science and stuff like that, went to uni, did a master's in uni in sports science, strength and conditioning, and then came back and I was working for a couple of rugby teams, Wigan Warriors, Sale Sharks, things like that. And the position came up at TNS, applied for that, and Craig was in charge at the time, so had an interview with Craig and managed to get the position.
Well, you did very well then, because we have a certain number of players just to your left trying to put you off, but you carried on there, Ed.
Yeah, tried my best. Simon Spender being a typical Simon Spender.
And of course you became involved with the New Saints then, and you've become an integral part of the staff. Give us an idea of a typical day at Park Hall when the team's training, if there is such a thing as a typical day.
Yeah, so obviously with my role, the days change a little bit in terms of what the players do. Loading wise, some days they'll be in the gym, some days they'll be on the pitch and the gym, some days they'll just be on the pitch and things like that. So part of my role is to manage what they're doing and what each player is doing individually, and how much they can do and how much we can push them, or whether we need to hold them back a bit. So I guess a typical day, week to week changes a little bit depending on when the game day is. So the further away from the game, the more we push them, essentially, or the closer to the game that they've just played, the more leeway we give them, I guess. So again, we'd usually arrive, players are out on pitch for about 10 a.m. That have done some pre-abs, some bits of activation in the gym before that, their own individual little bits and pieces. We're out on the pitch for 10, we'll do usually up to around somewhere a 90-minute training session, so an hour and a half, usually 10-15 minutes either side of that, again depending on the day. The content of that fluctuates, again completely dependent on what we're trying to get out of the session, whether it's a physical component, whether we're looking at more technical aspects, preparing for the weekend, and then they'll go in and depending on the day, again it's they might go into the gym, they might go home, and that's it.
And in terms of preparation, obviously you're on the pitch for a certain amount of time, but how much thought and planning goes into that pitch session beforehand?
Yeah, so from my point of view, there's quite a lot. Like I said there, like I touched on, really, there's a lot of stuff that goes into really trying to maintain some players' levels of fitness, trying to push some players' levels of fitness, because obviously not every player can play in every game. So we need to make sure the ones who aren't playing are catching up and are on the same level, if not getting better than they were. Just because they've missed a game, they shouldn't be falling behind. But in terms of the planning and prep, we've changed a lot of what we've done this year in terms of reporting things to the players with the GPS. So we've made things a lot more transparent, a lot easier to understand from their point of view. The things, like I said there, the GPS that we use, it can spit out a lot of numbers. You can get hundreds and hundreds of different metrics of how many metres you've sprinted, how many metres you've jogged, how many times you've turned, jumped, impacted with another player, things like that, all at different intensities. And players and staff don't need or want to know all that. So we've changed a lot of it. So now every player is specific to their individual match performance. They get compared on a training day. They're compared to their average match performance, and they understand that a lot more, because I can just say to them now, right, you've worked at 60% intensity of your match day. And they understand that, and that helps us to organise and to arrange and plan the training sessions. Because, like I said earlier on, if we are getting closer to a game day and we know that they can still work quite a high intensity, but we want to bring the volume of the session right down. We can look at the session and plan. Right, we know that we've done this drill before, and it means that all the players are going to roughly do work at an intensity of 60%, but a volume of 20%. And we know, right, so that drill fits perfectly into that day.
And you've been at the club a number of years, as you say. How important is it to get to know individual players so that when you prepare, obviously for the squad to train, you can also then focus, as it were, on individual players within the context of the big picture?
Yeah, it's huge. It's absolutely massive. I think for my role in terms of knowing individual players, not just from what they need physically point of view, but also from a motivation point of view. A large part of the role and the job is especially within our club, is to do with motivation. just because of where the players have come from. Some players have come from sort of big clubs, or have been at big clubs in the past. Some players have come from smaller clubs and trying to get up through the ranks and stuff. So motivations are completely different. And even within that, we could put on a session and say, right, we're doing some straight line running without the ball. And some players just, obviously, like most people, just don't want to do that because it's hard, it's without the ball, it's boring. So it's about knowing your players and what motivates them to get the best out of them. Because if they're not putting their max into any running drills, then they're not going to get anything out of it. And if we can change that and adapt it so we do a drill with a ball, which engages them a little bit more, then everyone's going to win, and vice versa, really.
And you mentioned the GPS system. For those who perhaps are unaware of that, tell us what it is, and especially so, how important it is for the New Saints in terms of preparing players to be at their best.
Yeah, so the GPS system, you might see it in when you see the players, they've got a little lump in the back of their shirts and stuff. It's a small little pod, probably half the size of a mobile phone, a little bit smaller. And that gives us all the sort. We can get live data from that. We can get the data post-game, post-training session. Like I said, it gives us hundreds and hundreds of metrics in terms of total distance that they've ran, total distance that they've sprinted, and all their sprint thresholds are individual to each player. Total turns, total accelerations, decelerations, impacts. There's hundreds and hundreds of things. So like I said, we've changed a lot of what we do around that this year, and that seems to be paying off quite well. That the players are understanding it and buying into it a lot more, because it's something that they can get their heads around a little bit more, rather than seeing, like in the Matrix, there's just numbers everywhere, really.
We're in Cardiff right now. We're in the hotel. We've just eaten, and we have a big game tomorrow. In fact, they're all big games, aren't they, in the league at the moment? How important is it in terms of player preparation for an overnight stay when you're playing the next day at lunchtime or early afternoon?
Yeah, it's huge. Like you said there, I think they're all big games now. The league's got a lot stronger, and it's getting a lot closer year on year. So I think the preparation for a game, in the same way that prepare in the week, and like I said, bringing the different training days into account, preparing the night before and the day before is as vital as any part of that, because those 24, 48 hours before a game are really where you get your mindset right, get your body right, and make sure everything's in line.
And of course food as well. There is a very distinctive style to the food when we come away. We don't get chips and cakes and all those sort of things. It's very focused. How involved are you, Ed, in terms of liaising with the hotel in terms of what they prepare and how they prepare it?
Yeah, so like you said there, food is massive in terms of it fuels performance. So we know that, and we take quite a good stance on that in terms of liaising with the hotels and the places that we go to try and get them to get as close to a sort of set menu that we've devised and we've put together as we can. We know that those are on the menu, the foods that our players like, but they're also foods that are going to help the players perform at their best level, really. So we try to speak through myself, or I pass the information on to Ian or Jacob, and we try to speak to the hotels or the places that we eat in terms of eating times, the quality of the food, how it's prepared, and what they're actually getting.
Yeah, I was actually going to say next, it's not just the food, but also the time at which it's eaten. That's particularly important on a match day. Yeah,
hugely important. So obviously we know, again, different foods have different types of release in terms of the energy and how they affect the body. So yeah, it's important.
And what about the lockdown? How has that affected your role with the club?
Yeah, so the lockdown, obviously, it was a big challenge for everyone. It was especially big, really, for us, because it sort of hit us for quite a long time. And because we're so close to the border, it's difficult to decipher what rules and regulations we're under a lot of the time. So it meant that we switched a lot of things to online. We did a few Zoom sessions and things like that, which I know everyone did. The thing that we did change slightly, and we probably went away from what I saw some other clubs doing, is I know a lot of clubs went and said, right, players needed to go and run 5k, 10k in certain times, or just get out and do those distances. And that's something that we won't do. And again, it's not any disrespect to the clubs that did do that, but and we know that players in games will cover 8k, 10k, 12k in a game. But running 10k out on the road is completely different to running 10k in a football match. There's no turning, there's no jumping, there's no sprinting. So we tried to replicate a lot of what they were doing within that scenario and still cover the right distances. So they had set drills and set runs and exercises to do, which we tracked. And again, that seems to be coming back on us now a little bit. The fitness is stayed pretty good, or as good as we could hope for, and we're really starting to push on.
And as well as the New Saints said, as we said, you've been involved for a number of years. You've also worked elsewhere, the English FA as well. Yeah,
I worked for England for a few years, predominantly on the girls' side of things. So I worked with the girls from under 14s and 15s all the way up to under 23s. So.
And do you find that experience elsewhere helps you here and vice versa?
Yeah, massively so. I think, like you said there, not just the England stuff, but I've done a lot of stuff in rugby and swimming and a lot of different sports. And I always say this, I get quite a few people either contacting me on Twitter or asking me questions who are doing degrees and wanting a bit of experience and advice because of the roles that I've had and the links that I've got. And one of the things that I'll say to everyone is always try and get as much experience as you can. If you want to end up in football, that's great, but you can take so much from rugby, swimming, football, hockey, and add it into your sort of your bag of tricks for what you'd use on a football pitch, because you might get, for example, Danny Redmond's dislocated his shoulder a few weeks ago, and there's loads and loads of stuff that we do with the swimmers to get their shoulders strong. So there's loads of things that we can take from that and put it into that situation.
And finally, Ed, let's talk about your gym. Obviously, you've got a separate business that you work with. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've got a gym based in North Wales, in Flintshire. It's actually set up as what's called a not-for-profit. It's a community interest company. So basically everything that we do is with the community in mind. Any profit that's made has to go back into the business to keep improving the business for the idea that the community gets the benefit of it, really. So again, yeah, it's been tough keeping that going and keeping everything on top. But we're a little bit different to most gyms in that we're a big sort of community, really. All the members know each other and they come a lot for the social side as much as the sort of the exercise side of things. So we've got a big WhatsApp group and we've got a lot of things going on that really support the sort of the social and mental health as well as the physical health. So switching things to online was really good, and people really bought into it, so it's helped a lot, really.
You mentioned Simon Spender earlier, trying to put you off. Often when I'm on the training pitch going around filming, he's always talking about your gym and giving it a mention by name. Do you want to do that, Ed?
Yeah, sure. Number one, Health Strength Performance. Number one, HSP, if you go on Twitter or Instagram or anything like that.
And the players also use the gym as well, don't they, from time to time?
Yeah, they do, yeah, when we can get there. And obviously it's got a few little bits of extra kit that we can't get at our gym at the venue, so we try to get there when we can. And I think the players enjoy it, to be fair. I know it's a little bit of travel for them, but it's coming out of an area where they go to the football pitch every day, and they go to our gym at TNS every day, so something different's always a bit more exciting.
Ed, thank you for your time this evening. Very much appreciated the insight that you've given to us, not only in your work with the New Saints, but also in your own wider work as well.
No problem.